Can we say the NBA, the National Basketball Association, could they be working towards resuming the 2019-20 regular season in Disney World? That sounds like an interesting concept here of continuing to play basketball all in Disney World here. But it sounds like the latest developments on the NBA, as you know, with all major league sports being put on pause here from the global pandemic from COVID-19 or coronavirus here, that many of these major leagues, and it's another weekend that going to make a few videos talking about the ideas that we're hearing from other major leagues here. But this one seems to be the most interesting one of all, where the NBA is thinking about continuing on playing basketball to conclude either the 2019-20 regular season or maybe jump right into the playoffs here, which in a separate video I'll talk about the NHL's idea on what they plan to do, as it sounds like their Players Association, as well the Major Players Association, the NBA, are proposing on playing all in Disney World here in Orlando, Florida here, because there were definitely ideas floated around when it comes to the NBA about playing in a couple of hub cities here. I know Orlando, Florida definitely was already looked upon, and Las Vegas, Nevada was also looked upon, and maybe having two conferences here. But they're leaning towards now all playing in Disney World here. I've never been to Disney World. I've been to Disneyland, and actually it was over 20 years ago, before the California expansion was just starting there, so I haven't been there since then. But the reason why they're looking at going to potentially have basketball play in Orlando, Florida there, because, well, Florida, that part of Florida actually has been one of the least hit from this pandemic here. But also the fact that I also learned that here's that ESPN World Wide Sports there, and definitely is kind of like a big sports campus there, which could potentially would work in theory here. I mean, there's obviously risk involved, and I mean, there's still risk no matter what league we're talking about here, and they're resuming the plan to play here. But it definitely sounds interesting that everybody could be going to Disney World here to play basketball there, because in the ESPN World Sports there's definitely many courts there that you could potentially, I mean, they're still figuring out if they're going to want to finish up the regular season here, because it's around the 63 to 67 game mark when the pause button was pressed on Major League Sports here, or could potentially jump right into a playoff here, and then they're still figuring out how to seed it here. I know that everyone says that maybe there's more parity, but I think about the Major League Sports here. The NBA, yes, they do have a salary cap here. However, the fact that you still build up more super teams here where you got the good and then the very good here, but there's still various scenarios that they're still figuring out here on if they're going to either finish the regular season or maybe jump right into a playoffs here, or something that the NHL has already, sounds like it's about to almost happen here, is doing a proposed expanded playoff format here where top seeds would get buys into the official playoffs here, and then have a play-in round for the lower seeded teams here to keep the variable alive on if their season was wiped out here, that there could have been still potential ground to make up for the lower seeded teams that maybe could have still went in here. But it definitely sounds very interesting here. However, the only risk that I have, that I think having everybody, regardless if it's all 30 NBA teams or 16 or 20, 24, depending on what they decide to do, and it sounds like they're still figuring that out here, is if they're going to finish the season or jump around the playoffs here, is obviously, having everybody all together here, because everything that we still got to figure out here is how you're going to do testing and what are the procedures in place here about how the contact and social distancing, as well as by chance if someone tested positive on the team or medical staff or whatever here. And that's the other thing I've heard too, is one of the things to limit the number of people in this bubble here. I mean, the NBA isn't as expansive compared to the other major leagues like the NHL or the MLB or football, both football leagues, the NFL and the CFL here. is that there might be medical teams shared out. Because the other idea is that if you have everybody in one place here, that could also open up maybe some other ideas on how the playoff format could work here too. And I know the other pushback on, well, why did you just cancel everything and jump right into next season? Well, who knows where we're going to be when it comes to social distancing restrictions, or when government and health authorities deem it safe, or if there's less travel restrictions or restrictions on how many people gather here. What happens if we're in the same spot, let's say, whenever the next season is going to start here, that we are now? What are you going to do? And then, this is obviously a trial run for all Major League Sports here, and I know that depending on whatever they decide to do, that if they went to an expanded regular season, or continue the regular season, or go into expanded playoffs here, that as teams get eliminated here, you have fewer people in one spot there as teams get eliminated, which definitely you have less to manage and control here. But that's the one element there, and also the fact of all the TV. All the deals. Obviously cash is king too, and all the leagues are trying to recoup their costs here. I know the one luxury that I have, that the NBA has compared to the other Major League Sports, is that their TV deal is still a few more years out here, while the other major leagues they're getting close up to getting a new deal there, and they need to still have the product on TV and stay relevant too. And also, there's been recent sports that are returning in North America here. As I heard that NASCAR, that they've already had a couple events here, and their ratings skyrocketed just because all of us sports fans, including myself here. I'm mostly into the NHL and all local sports here in Calgary, but I do casually follow baseball and the NBA, and I would definitely be starving for some fresh content here. And whatever the NBA decides on their return to play here, because the other thing is there's not going to be as much updates that I'll give for the MLB in this episode, or this video here, is that they still sound like the MLB still looking at possibly coming back in spring training in the middle of June and starts their season in Independence Day or July 4th there, and then play a 82 game schedule in their divisions here to limit travel. But baseball is still committed to playing all in their home stadiums there, which definitely of the Major League Sports has the most travel here. But whatever the NBA decides, and it sounds like they're leaning towards everybody playing in Disney World at the ESPN World of Sports here, because the NHL is still leaning towards a couple hub cities, and one of the hub cities in Las Vegas, Nevada there was one of the potential hub cities that the NHL is looking at here. And I know that if, let's say potentially, if the NBA was going to still go to Vegas there, that might change the NHL plans here. It could still coexist, but given the circumstances here. But this is definitely the most unique plan I find of all the major sports, of having everybody playing in one spot here. Still, here we are in the last week of May here, so I guess this weekend would be the Memorial Day weekend for the U.S. here, that we're still easily 6 weeks or maybe 2 months away from this proposal to start here, because it still sounds like that the NBA wouldn't want to return until about the middle of July here, and then still figuring out, are they going to still finish up the regular season here, where we still got 16, 17 games left as of the pause here, and then what are they going to want to do with playoffs here? Is it going to be the same top 8 in each conference, or maybe a play-in here? Is that play-in going to have so many games? Or it sounds like they'll still have the 4 rounds, best of 7 here, and it takes a couple months for the regular playoffs to wrap up here, and we're pushing things back until, if they don't start until the middle of July. I'm just throwing out dates here based on what I've been reading and hearing here. And then it all depends on if they're going to continue on with the regular season, then go into playoffs here. We're looking well into, late September, early October for the Larry O'Brien Trophy to be awarded here. And then, their off season with their draft and free agent frenzy. I did say in a earlier video, I believe it was the last video here, where I was hearing about ideas where the NBA, maybe with all this going on here and pushing things back here, that next season won't start until December around Christmas Day there, that I've heard, and I actually would like the idea that maybe the NBA could consider starting in December all the time here once everything gets somewhat back to normal here. It's definitely going to be a while here, especially when I recently, went to the store and did a supply run there, and things definitely were different there. But getting back into the sports here, that I think it would actually be a good idea for the NBA to always start in December, for the idea of spreading out the major sports here. I mean, the only thing that could complicate it is, colleges and that, or usually if it's an elite player that's looking to go high in the NBA draft, they announced that they're going to, forgo their last year's school to go in the NBA draft and usually play right away there. But that's the only snake there. But, this is just one of the ideas that I've heard. This is mostly talking about the NBA, and it sounds like that they're leaning towards that everybody is going to be going to Disney World for a nice little vacation there at the ESPN World Wide Sports there. They definitely have various facilities there where, they could potentially still finish the regular season and have a bunch of games, all played in here. I know it's the one thing. The other thing with Major League Sports here too is, all about putting eyeballs on their TV, to fulfill their TV contracts and have sports fans watching it here. They still have to figure out how they're going to do it here. It's not like, you've heard some ideas and other videos about, they could play 4 or 5 games a day. And I think that was back when they were still thinking about wrapping up the regular season here. Well, it'd be harder to, follow your team. Let's say if they're playing at, noon on a Tuesday or something. I know obviously when it gets to the playoffs here, they'll probably figure something out. So it's all prime time there. But that's still the other thing that still seems to be figured out is, obviously you need all the general managers to approve here, because especially if they're not thinking about turning the regular season here, and half the league or some teams on the league won't actually be coming back, and they'll be looking forward to the next season there, which that's the one thing I'll talk about in my NHL with the proposed playoff format there. But it's a definitely unique idea. This is the most unique, where there's a facility out there and it's in an area that hasn't been as hard hit about with this global pandemic here. And it sounds like all Major League Sports won't come back until July here. Baseball to start their season, and the NHL and the NBA to conclude either their seasons or just jump right in the playoffs and then decide their respective championships there. But it just sounds interesting here in NBA and Disneyland here. Major League Baseball, I could say, is that they're still figuring out all this testing, and it still seems to be a rift between the league and the Players Association, especially when it comes to finances here. But what do you think of this NBA in Disney World here? It just still sounds positive that all sports talk back here, because a couple weeks ago it almost sounded like the NBA, you just heard nothing. You just heard about team facilities potentially opening up here where it's deemed safe. And I think the other thing I can mention too is that you hear ideas about team facilities. Once they're opening up, teams can practice in their own facilities with their own, have to follow their restrictions or where the authority having jurisdiction there. Maybe they'll practice there for a couple weeks, and then eventually everyone will go to Orlando, Florida to practice there and get ready to whatever they decide. If it's either going to be, wrapping up the regular season or just jumping right into the playoffs here. That all depends on who's going to come back and practice here. But I just say, what do you think about this? Anyway, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, Home Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, you need to do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. That's what I mostly do on this channel. But I also like to follow other sports here, and given what's been going on right now, I'm definitely starving for fresh new content here. As for a Calgary sports fan, a Flames fan here, I can only relive games from 1989 and 2004 from the Flames for so much here. I need something fresh and new now, so that's what I mostly do. But I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share my experiences. Let's say I'm on the road or on the holidays or at a sporting event here. However, I don't think I'm going to be doing any of those activities anytime soon, given what's going on here. But if it all sounds like you'll be interested to watch, on my channel here to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. You know what you should do. I also have my other social media links down in the description below there. So yeah, NBA and Disney World, Mickey and Minnie Mouse and the gang all be joining some NBA if it's deemed safe that they can even go watch the games, and maybe Raptors, we the North, will be in Florida. We'll take over Florida here and maybe defend the championship here. We can dream under different circumstances, but as I say, I'll see you in the next video here.